There was still steam on the mirror. That's the part that got me. The shower was clearly just used. The curtain was damp. One of her long auburn hairs clung to the tile like a silent witness. The floor mat was twisted, like someone stepped out in a hurry. But the house? Silent. No music. No smell of food. No hum of a blow dryer. Just absence. She was supposed to be home. The text said, "Just got in. Showering. What do you want for dinner?" That was 37 minutes before I walked through the door. And by the time I got there, she was gone. I stood in the bathroom like a complete idiot, just staring at that one stupid hair on the tile, wondering, how long does it take to vanish? I called her. Straight to voicemail. Texted her. No reply. I walked through every room like I was looking for a ghost I wasn't ready to admit existed. Purse was gone. Phone charger gone. Jacket gone. But not all her stuff. No, that would make too much sense. Her laptop was still open on the desk. Slippers under the coffee table. Her favorite mug, half full of tea, on the windowsill. Like she'd been interrupted. I even opened the closet. Like maybe she was hiding in there? Laughing at me? Nope. Just the smell of her perfume. Faint and dying. I'm not good with silence. It makes me think too loud. So I started talking to myself. Out loud. In the kitchen, over the sound of my own heartbeat. Maybe she just ran to the store? Maybe she forgot something at work. Maybe I'm being insane. You know how crazy you have to be to gaslight yourself? I sat down on the couch. Her throw blanket still warm, I swear to God. I called her again. Then again. Then again. And somewhere between call number 6 and number 7, I stopped asking where she was and started wondering who she was with. You ever feel your stomach turn cold while you're still breathing warm air? That's when I knew. Not for sure, but in my bones. I just knew. She hadn't been taken. She hadn't had an emergency. She had chosen to walk out while I was on my way home, after texting me like everything was fine. That was intentional. And that meant I wasn't dealing with a disappearance. I was dealing with a secret. She came back the next morning. No explanation. No shame. Just walked in like she forgot her keys. Smiled at me. And said, "Hey, do you want coffee?" That's when I decided, no, not coffee. Not answers. Not this life. She didn't know it yet. But while she was gone, I found the thread. And once I started pulling it, everything unraveled. By the time she came home again the next night, I was already gone. The audacity. That's what stuck with me. Not the silence. Not the weird disappearance. Not even the ghost-like way she moved around the kitchen like nothing happened. It was the calmness. The fake normalcy. Like I was the one overreacting for noticing that she disappeared for an entire night and came back wearing different earrings. I didn't answer her question about coffee. I just stared at her. Not angrily. Not sadly. I was too tired for either. It felt like I was watching someone perform a rehearsed role. She opened the fridge, saw it was mostly empty, and muttered something about needing to go grocery shopping later. I just sat there and nodded, wondering how many layers of lies I was supposed to chew through before I could finally reach something honest. Then, with the kind of casual venom only a guilty person could deliver, she looked over her shoulder and asked me if I'd slept well. Slept well? I wanted to laugh. Or scream. Or both. But instead, I said, "You didn't come home." She paused for exactly 1 second too long. Then she said, "Yeah, I was at Eliza's. I told you, didn't I?" No, she didn't. I had texted Eliza the night before. Twice. No answer. I was already pretty sure Eliza knew something she wasn't saying. I kept my voice level. "You texted me that you were home. That you were in the shower." She turned to face me fully then, holding a coffee mug that might as well have been a hand grenade. She shrugged. "I meant I was going home. I got distracted. I forgot to update you." The lie was so thin it nearly collapsed in the air between us. But the thing is, when someone lies to your face like that, so smoothly, so calmly, what they're really doing is daring you to challenge the script. If I pushed, I'd be the controlling one. The paranoid husband. The emotionally unstable guy who jumps to conclusions. I could already hear the tone she'd use if I accused her of anything. "Clive, are you really doing this right now?" So I did nothing. Nothing outwardly, anyway. Inside, I made a decision. I would play along. For now. But I wouldn't stay stupid. She showered again. That's what really burned. A second shower. Like she needed to wash off the previous version of herself and reset the simulation. I could hear the water running and imagined every second she spent under it was another second she had to rewrite her story. While she was in there, I checked her purse. I know, Don't dig through your spouse's things. Trust, respect, all that. But let's be honest. If you saw what I saw, you'd dig too. Nothing. Not really. Just a gum wrapper, 2 receipts for gas, and a folded-up napkin with some kind of smudged phone number on it. No name. Just a number, written in red pen, with what looked like a lipstick stain half overlapping it. I took a picture of it. Then I put everything back exactly the way I found it. By the time she came out of the bathroom in her robe, steam trailing behind her like fog in a horror movie, I was back on the couch, acting like I hadn't just stepped through the back door of reality. She asked me if I wanted to go for a walk later. I said maybe. I already knew I wouldn't be here by the time she came back from it. I waited until she left the apartment. She said she was going out to clear her head, which felt like the kind of thing people say when they're about to do something they don't want to explain later. I nodded and acted like it was fine, like I wasn't paying attention to how long it took her to pick out a jacket or how carefully she checked her phone before she put it in her pocket. As soon as the door closed behind her, I went straight to my laptop and typed the number from the napkin into every reverse lookup site I could find. Most came back empty, or worse, flagged as unlisted or possibly VoIP. Great. Exactly what I needed. A number that didn't want to be found. But one result stood out. It was tied to a bar. Not a chain. Not a place you'd stumble into by accident. Some obscure little place across town called 12 Pines Lounge. I'd never heard of it. We don't live near there. None of her friends do either. It wasn't on any of our credit card statements, and she definitely never mentioned it. I found their website. It was bare bones, almost suspiciously so. One blurry photo of a dimly lit interior, a fake-looking menu with overpriced cocktails, and an address tucked away in the corner like an afterthought. Something about it felt wrong. I don't know how long I sat there staring at that screen, but I remember my hand was shaking a little. I wasn't scared exactly, just aware. Aware that if I kept going, I wouldn't be able to go back to the version of my life where I still believed everything could be fixed with a long talk and a weekend getaway. When she got back, I didn't say anything. I asked her how her walk was. She said fine and kissed me on the forehead like she hadn't just pulled the rug out from under everything I believed about her. Later that night, while she slept beside me like she didn't have a secret tucked behind her smile, I looked up the bar again. It closed at 2 a.m. I wasn't planning to sleep anyway. I didn't even know what I was looking for when I pulled into the gravel parking lot behind 12 Pines Lounge. The building looked like it had been forgotten by time. Faded green paint, one flickering neon sign, no windows in the front. It didn't scream affair. It screamed, don't ask questions. It was just past midnight. I sat in the car for a full 5 minutes before going in. Not because I was scared. Okay, maybe a little. But because I suddenly realized how ridiculous it all was. What was I expecting? That I'd walk in, see her in someone else's lap, and finally get my answer? That someone would tap me on the shoulder and say, hey buddy, your wife was here last night with a guy who wasn't you? I almost left. Almost. But then I remembered the napkin, the lipstick mark, the lie about Eliza, and the coffee she offered me like she hadn't just vanished from our life for a night. So I got out of the car and walked through the door like someone entering a story they weren't written into. The place was dark, not in a moody, classy way, more like a place where the lights were low on purpose. The music was soft, some kind of slow jazz that didn't match the rest of the vibe. A few people were scattered at tables, most with their backs turned. The bartender looked at me like I'd just interrupted something private. I took a seat at the bar and ordered a soda. I didn't want to be foggy. I needed to notice things. The napkin was bothering me. It wasn't just the number, it was the way it was folded. It was tucked, almost like it had been handed off discreetly. And I kept thinking, why keep it? Why stuff it in her purse instead of throwing it away? After a few minutes, I asked the bartender if he recognized the number. I told him it was left on my windshield. I didn't want to seem crazy. He glanced at it and shook his head, too quickly. No clue. People write all kinds of stuff on napkins here. It was rehearsed. I could tell. He had seen it before. Or maybe he had written it. That's when I noticed a woman in the far corner of the lounge. She wasn't looking at me, not directly, but something about her posture shifted when I spoke to the bartender. Her shoulders tensed, like she was listening. I decided to leave. Not because I was done, but because I suddenly understood something important. Whatever my wife was doing, she didn't want me to find it. And this place wasn't some mistake on her part. It was a controlled environment. A choice. A part of her life I was never supposed to walk into. But now I had. And I'd seen enough to know this wasn't just a one-night lie. It was a whole second life. The next morning, she hummed while brushing her teeth. That was new. Not the brushing. She's always been obsessive about her teeth. But the humming. It was too cheerful, too light. And that's what made it feel unnatural. Like she was playing a version of herself I was supposed to buy into. I made coffee. Burned the toast. She laughed like she always did when I messed something up in the kitchen, but it didn't sound like her laugh. It sounded like a recording of it, just slightly off. Then, halfway through her eggs, she said, "By the way, on Tuesday, I'm working late. We've got the pitch review with the London team. Could be a late one." It was casual. Too casual. I nodded like it meant nothing. Like I wasn't sitting there actively trying to remember if I'd ever heard her mention a London team before. That's when I realized something. Tuesday was the day she was gone. The day she said she was at Eliza's. The same day the text came in saying she was in the shower at home. Now it was a pitch with the London team? She forgot her own lie. That's what broke me. Not the bar, not the napkin, not the lipstick. The fact that she couldn't keep track of what stories she'd told me. That meant there were too many. I went to the bedroom, locked the door, and pulled out the backup phone I used for work. She didn't know about it. It was old, cracked, and still had a prepaid SIM card. I'd used it for freelance gigs before we got married and never got around to tossing it. That phone became my lifeline. I messaged Eliza from a fake number, said I was from a delivery service, and asked to confirm a drop-off at the address we both knew she lived at. Eliza replied immediately, confused but polite. Then I asked if Marin had been there Tuesday night. No reply. I waited. 30 minutes passed. Then finally, "Why are you asking?" I didn't answer. If she wasn't covering for Marin, she'd have said yes or no. The hesitation told me everything. She was involved, or at least aware of something I wasn't supposed to know. That night, I lay beside Marin in bed and watched her scroll through her phone with that soft little smile she always gets when she's texting someone she likes. I stared at the screen's reflection in her glasses, watching her thumbs type and delete and retype. She turned to me eventually and asked, "What?" I smiled. I said, "Nothing. Just thinking how lucky I am." She leaned over and kissed me. I kissed her back. But inside, I was already gone. Because I knew that next Tuesday, I wouldn't be sitting at home waiting for her to come back. I'd be somewhere else, following her. Tuesday came slower than any day I can remember. I spent the hours before she left pretending to work, refreshing my inbox even though I knew I wasn't reading a single email. I was rehearsing. Every word. Every expression. I knew I had to look tired but not alert, casual but not too casual. If she caught on, even for a second, it was over. She left just after 6 p.m., wearing the same gray coat she always wore to late nights at the office. I waited exactly 4 minutes before grabbing my keys, slipping on a hat, and heading for the car. I didn't even care how cliché it felt. I wasn't trying to be subtle. I just needed the truth. She didn't drive to her office. That was the first lie of the night. She took a right instead of the usual left, didn't even glance toward the freeway. I followed 2 cars behind. It was raining lightly, just enough to blur my windshield and my judgment. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel, heart pounding like I was running a marathon barefoot. She drove for 25 minutes. Then she pulled into a parking garage I didn't recognize, tucked between a shuttered yoga studio and some closed-down print shop. I parked outside, across the street, engine off, lights off, just watching. She got out of the car slowly, checked her phone, looked around once, then walked down the block. She wasn't going to work. She wasn't going to Eliza's. She walked into a building I'd never seen her near in my life. No signs, no windows, just a steel door and a keypad. I couldn't see what code she entered, but the door buzzed and opened for her without hesitation. She disappeared inside, and I sat there, jaw clenched, breath shallow. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 40. I knew I should leave. I knew there was a version of this story where I sat in that car all night and drove home in the morning, pretending I hadn't seen anything, pretending she was still the person I married. But that version was a lie, and I was done lying to myself. I got out of the car, crossed the street, stood in front of the same steel door. No idea what I'd say if someone opened it. No plan. Just this slow-burning, heavy ache in my chest that told me something was very, very wrong behind that door. And for the first time since this all started, I wondered, what if it wasn't another man? What if it was something worse? The door didn't lock behind her. I didn't know why. Maybe she forgot. Maybe someone inside buzzed it open again for someone else. Either way, I caught it just before it clicked shut. I slipped inside without thinking, driven more by instinct than courage. At first, I thought it was empty. The hallway was narrow, too clean, unnaturally quiet, like a dentist's office right after closing. But the air smelled off. Chemical. Too cold for a building that didn't even have a front sign. I walked slowly, the sound of my shoes barely audible over the low hum of something mechanical deeper inside. Then I heard it. Voices. Faint, muffled, coming from behind a thick wooden door at the end of the hallway. One man, one woman. Not laughing, not whispering. Just talking, steady and deliberate, like people in the middle of something serious. I pressed my ear against the wood and caught pieces. Words like leverage, final payment, and one sentence that stopped my pulse entirely. She said he has no idea. The woman's voice was hers. Calm, measured, a little colder than usual, but unmistakably Marin. I stepped back, heart racing. My mind spiraled through every possibility. Blackmail? Some kind of scheme? I couldn't tell if this was something criminal or just personal, but I knew with absolute certainty. This wasn't about another man anymore. This wasn't about love or even betrayal in the romantic sense. This was about secrets, old ones, big ones, and I was never supposed to know they existed. I didn't stick around to hear more. I left as quietly as I came, walking back to my car with my thoughts unraveling by the second. If she could lie like that, so effortlessly, then how deep did this go? How much of our life had been real? I drove in silence. No radio, no GPS, just me and the weight of everything I didn't understand. That night, I couldn't sleep. She came home after midnight, claiming she'd stayed late to fix the pitch deck. She kissed me, climbed into bed, fell asleep like she wasn't hiding something the size of a second life behind her eyes. I watched her breathe, and I knew what I had to do next. Not confront her. Not yet. First, I had to vanish. Because whatever she was into, whatever was behind that door, if she found out I knew, I wasn't sure what she was capable of. And I wasn't about to find out from the wrong side of it. The morning I left, I didn't pack much. Just my laptop, my phone, the backup one, some clothes, and that old photo of us at the lake. The one from before we got married, before things got complicated. I didn't write a note. I didn't send a message. I just left. Quietly. Intentionally. The same way she had disappeared from me, I disappeared from her. But mine wasn't about secrets or lies. Mine was about finally choosing myself. I stayed in a cheap rental 2 towns over. No one knew me there. The air smelled like trees and gas station coffee, but it was quiet, and I could finally think. I spent those first few days going over everything. Her words, her stories, that place, the voice behind that door. I went through it all, again and again, like pieces of a puzzle that never quite fit. But the strangest thing happened. The more I sat with it, the less I needed to understand every piece. Sometimes the truth isn't one big explosion. It's a slow leak. And eventually, I stopped trying to plug it. On the 5th day, I got a message from her. Just one line. Are you okay? I didn't answer. Then, hours later, another. I don't know what you saw, or think you saw, but if you ever want to talk, I'll tell you the truth. That was it. No anger. No manipulation. Just that. And I realized something I hadn't expected to feel. Relief. Because in that moment, I understood that I didn't need the full story anymore. I didn't need to hear her version. I didn't need to fact-check the lies or break down every strange detail. I wasn't chasing answers now. I was chasing peace. And the truth, the real truth, was this. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining it. Something had been wrong. Deeply wrong. But instead of letting it poison me from the inside out, I let it go. And I let her go with it. 3 weeks later, I signed the lease on a small apartment near a lake. A different lake, not the one from the photo, but close enough. The kind where birds skim the surface in the morning and nobody asks where you came from. I started freelancing again, just small things. I started running, which I hadn't done in years. And slowly, I started breathing without having to brace for impact. She never messaged again. I think she understood I was gone for good. And the wildest part? I'm okay. I'm actually okay. I thought I'd fall apart if I left. That I'd drown in regret or what-ifs. But it turns out, you don't need closure from someone else to close a door. Sometimes, you just walk away, quietly, calmly, and find yourself exactly where you're supposed to be. Free.